Hello, friends. Welcome. This is my third session in a series of 8, Doug versus the Machine. We're going to do Agents Gone Wild. And if you got here through the RSVP, you can head back to the meetup. And I have another 5 sessions coming up. I'm doing 2 a week to the end of June. I've already done 3. This Thursday, we're going to do Fix My Prompt, You Coward. We're going to have AI work on prompts that I come up with to make them even better. And then we'll have a few more as we go into the end of August. So hope to see you there. Good news, at the end of recording this today, I will post it to my YouTube channel. I already posted it, 2 of them yesterday, or the 2 from last week. So if you want to head over to my channel, you can subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when it'll let you know when I publish those. I also publish videos on a regular basis on all different kinds of parts of technology, mostly now lately on AI, but lots of different ones. You can check out the catalog of videos I've done, as well as live streams with other people and live streams I've been on with other people for their stuff. I think it's a good set of stuff to learn from. So we've got till 1 o'clock. So this format here is really it's 3 parts, right? It's a combination of live demos, it's office hours, so you can ask me anything, and it's improvisation. So throw any question at me. We're going to talk to AI. I've got access to a whole bunch of different AI pieces. I pay for ChatGPT. I have access to GitHub Copilot. So if there's things that you're trying to do and can't get done, throw those at me. If something I'm doing sparks an idea, toss that into the chat and we can give it a try. Wherever it goes, it goes. Cool. So for those folks, I know there's people here that have been on before, but uh, I'm a 16-time Microsoft MVP. I wrote a book, PowerShell for Developers, years ago. Actually, Manning for the last couple of years has been asking me to write a book about AI, and I think about it. I try some things, and I go, "Yeah, it's moving too fast. I'm not going to do it." And yeah, I'm really glad I'm not part of the wave of things that have been published in the last year. They're pretty much obsolete at this point, and anything in very few books in the last several weeks that have come out are not obsolete. So I organized this New York City meetup. I sometimes try to do it in person. I post all my meetups on the meetup page, so if you're there, you'll know when I do that, and you can get connected to me on X, LinkedIn. I've dropped the YouTube link into the chat, and I have a GitHub repos that you can look at. I've just done some recently interesting things. Actually, a couple of folks from Microsoft reached out to me about them. They're up on GitHub, and I've posted those concepts to LinkedIn and X and Blue Sky, and I have a blog. So what else? Yeah. So real quick, this is kind
What
of
if you could get rid of long tense?
this is kind of my theme, and some people have seen this before, but I like repeating it. It's worth repeating. This is all about the principles that have stayed the same. Wise book decision. Thank you. Yeah. And I keep getting, like, every couple of months, like, it might seem to slow down, and then I go, maybe I should think about the book again, another type of from some different angles. And then I think about it. I take notes, which is good because it's good to take notes. And then I'm like, in like a couple of weeks, 3 weeks after, it's like, nope, just the fire hoses at it again. So one of the things, even though there's all these fire hoses and there's things like, well, every week we're hearing, and soon I think it's almost getting to daily, like, oh, there's a new state of the art LLM. Oh, there's a new feature from this one. Oh, there's a new feature from this. There's a change. This is a game changer, right? All this stuff, and unfortunately, you get lost in the noise. I get lost in the noise. I thought I was out of the noise like around September last year, and then it just ramped up again. And the 3 things that have stayed consistent, and I know this because I've done hundreds of hours of work with AI, and I don't just sit there and ask it things like, hey, what wine should I have with my meatloaf? I do things like, build me this code, try this, research that, do it from this angle, retry it from that, port. I'm gonna, give me some Go code. I change it, give it back, and say, port it to Rust. I do most things from a development perspective, but there's other things I do outside of that. And what remains the same is these principles: context, model, and prompt. Right. So context, model, and prompt. Context is like if I wanted to take a PDF and give it to chat and say, hey, what's in this thing? Give me a summary. The context is the PDF. The prompt is, hey, give me a summary. The model will be whatever model I have available in chat. Um, so the key things to know there, which is basically it's, people, the old joke of like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. And that's what this is all about. If you give it too much context, the model's going to get lost. If you give it 1,000 PDFs of 400 pages each, it's not going to figure out what you want. If you give it a misleading prompt, because we do that, right? When we talk to people, people go, what are you talking about? Well, AI may not come back and ask you what you're talking about, and it may go off and do a bunch of stuff and give you results that you didn't expect or want. And it all comes down to model, right? And the model is all about cost, accuracy, and latency, right? If you want a very accurate model that's really fast, it's going to cost you some money. And not that, it's not, depending on what you're doing. If you're reviewing and doing text classification on thousands of PDFs, yeah, it's going to cost money. But in what we do on a regular basis, even if we ask it to generate code, it's not even going to, it's going to be fractions of pennies, and it's getting cheaper. But the model, you don't have to know it out of the box, like what the cost, accuracy, and latency is. Who cares? Just give this a shot. Where we are in the game of AI is, we're in chapter maybe 5 or 6 out of a 100 chapter book. So, but getting in there and prompting and seeing how the model responds and seeing, well, what is this thing called context and what is a prompt and why do models matter? And learning how to work with that gives you an intuitive sense and it builds that, it helps you internalize what this is about so you can be more fluid. So practice, practice, practice. And so today, let's see what we're going to do. So what I want to do is first off, I'm going to talk about, let's get rid of this. I'm going to talk about agents, right? What are agents? In its simplest terms, agents, are basically, I'm going to use programming terminology. If you don't get it, let me know and I can figure out an easier way to say it for you, or a different way. And so basically it's an object that has access to an LLM, a large language model. Or basically you can say it's a function that has access to a large language model. Another way to say it is programmatically, if you have a loop that has access to a large language model, you can let it loop and you can take the initial prompt, pass it into the large language model, capture what the model gives you, keep that in an array or keep that together, and that becomes the conversation. And you can keep sending it back to the model with the initial instructions being something like, keep answering this question till you think you've satisfied it, or you have more questions for the user. So that basically is an agent. Now, the way we're using agents, all the big companies and the little companies and the startups are coming up with really amazing ways to make that easier and to do a lot more amazing, crazy stuff. But in essence, that's what an agent is. There's nothing magical about it. They have to use words like agents and agentic workflows and all that kind of stuff. And, retrieval augmented generative AI and RAG and agentic RAG, because that's what sells. So while there's a lot of amazing stuff going on, there's also a lot of people trying to, give you brochures and say, buy my stuff, use my stuff, which is fine. But be aware that that's what's going on. And it's while it's complicated underneath, it's not really that complicated. And then what we get to use it with, just the more you practice, the more you become comfortable with it, and you go, oh, I can really see how this is going to help me no matter what job I do, programmer wise or not. Now I'm going to use GitHub. I don't know how many people here are familiar with GitHub. That's not really important because what I'm going to show is how Microsoft is doing agentic workflows, and pretty much all companies are doing this. So if you see what I'm doing here, you can move over to that. When you move over to the other ones, like Jules from Google, it'll be like, okay, it has different buttons and it has different menus or has different options, but basically it's the same thing. And Anthropic's doing the same thing. Meta's working on that, as well as Amazon, and all the startups are doing different things as well. And again, what's cool is they're all watching each other, so they're all taking they're taking each other's ideas and trying to improve upon it. And some of it just makes total sense. Anthropic came up with MCP, which is Model Context Protocol, and it's amazing what that concept did, and everybody's implementing it. So anyway, it's a little bit different. So the most important part again is to get involved with it. Pick your domain that you like, pick a web tool that you like, or pick, if you want to use code or Aider or ClientBot, use those tools, but get in there, prompt, have the agents and the models do things so you can see what's really going on. So what I have here is a GitHub repo, and then right, agents gone wild. And what I did is I put some data in it. Now in GitHub, I can press a period on the actual repo, and what it does is it pulls down everything in the browser, and I am now in Visual Studio Code in the browser, and it's all in around my the data in my repo. So I have a README, right? It's just a basic one. I just set up Contoso SmartFlow, just a bunch of stuff about it, nothing important. These are all just examples. I have a thing called posts where let's say I was going to do blog posts from. I have 3 short blog posts in here from quantum, bio, neural, and sustainable computing. And in content, I have FAQ.md, right, with a bunch of FAQs on it. Okay, let's take a look at what we can do with this. Now, I'm going to go to the repository. So you can think of this repository as this is the context, right? This is as if I gave it a bunch of PDFs, ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini's piece. And there have been ways that, and I've written stuff that I can actually pull all this down with something called in my PowerShell work, saying convert to AI prompt. And I can actually pull all this content down, put it into a good format, and then I can then use it in ChatGPT or Grok and say, hey, look at this stuff and look at, answer these questions and so on. Microsoft has taken that a step further. They can take the entire repo, make it as context, and then they open up the idea that you can create issues. So in GitHub, you can create an issue. Typically, you use this, like if you're using a piece of open source software and you run into a bug or you have a question or you have a feature that you want to discuss, you can come into issues, you can click the new issue, you can give it a title, right? And then you can write your description. I'm using version 6, and then maybe you should have this, or I got an error doing that. And this is the way we communicate as software development teams, but it's like a to-do list in essence. So I've got a repo, I've got a bunch of content, FAQs, posts, and a README, and then I created 3 issues. One issue is I said add 3 FAQs to the FAQ page. Another one I said add blog posts about summer event, and then the last one I said add how to contribute to the README. If I look into those, I wrote them up as, this is a prompt, so I want to be explicit, right? As I can be, so I can reduce hallucinations. Add a new FAQ section, steps to reproduce, expected behavior, and the environment, right? And I tell it where I want it to go and the files I want to reference for style and whatnot. And the same thing for the how to contribute, right? Steps to reproduce, expected behavior, use the README to do what you got to do. And then the last one was I want to do a blog post about a summer event, create a new one, and I tell it what format I want to see the file in. Posts, I want to put it in posts 2025, blah, blah, blah. Appropriate YAML front matter, right? If you do a lot of these tools, they have YAML front matter. So I'm telling the model to do that. Now here comes the cool part. I can select all of these different issues. I can select 1, I can select 5, every other one, whatever I'm looking to get done. And then I get over here and I can say assign, right? And I have this option called Copilot. Now, I think they might have this out in general preview, right? And I don't know if it's free at this point. You get like 20 shots at it, and it resets over time. So I don't know that answer. Sorry about that. So I selected my issues. I'm going to tell it Copilot. So in essence, what this is I have my repo as my context. All 3 of these issues are my prompts. right? I'm going to let it figure out a model to choose. I can tweak that depending on how I write up my issues. And then I'm going to say, give this to the AI model, like as if I'm in ChatGPT and hitting enter. So click on that. It does a bulk update, right? Completes. So what did it do? So now if I go back and I'll choose one, you can see, hopefully, we have a pair of eyes, right? That Copilot actually now has seen this issue. And what it does is two things. It creates a PR, right? So now I can start tracking that issue, what the Copilot is doing, and it created a branch, which is really cool. Now, these terminologies, branch, issues, PRs, don't worry about it. What the essence is that this data will not be changed. It'll those three pieces, those three issues, got kicked off in the background in parallel, and Copilot is working on it, and it's working on it in its own separate workspace, right? And we can watch what it does by keeping an eye on the PRs, right? So nothing's really happening, and it does it via the action capabilities inside of GitHub. Now, I'm doing a non-dev demo here, right? We'll go into, so this is just updating READMEs. It's adding a blog post, and it's going to change the FAQ. So the key thing here is to see that all of this is happening in parallel. All I did was create an issue, right? Which is basically like typing in a prompt. And then I'm assigning a copilot to the issue to make it happen. This is 1% of what this thing is doing and what Microsoft has released to us. We are, again, chapter 6 of 100. This thing is going to grow into some pretty amazing stuff. Jules does something similar. All the other major tech companies in AI, like OpenAI and Anthropic, are coming up with their own approaches of these types of things. So let's keep an eye on that. And what I'm going to do now is, while that's cooking, it shouldn't take but a few minutes. Let's see if I can bring up, oops, we'll grab, so now I'm going to go in and we can see more agent stuff in, this is the agent mode. If you can see down here on the bottom left, okay, you can go into ask agent or edit mode, and I can choose my model, right? So this is back to the principles, right? Model. The context is, again, my workspace where I have all my files inside of an editor. And I will prompt it. Now I'm going to just prompt something off the, and if you have some questions here, drop them in. If you've got a different angle you want me to look at, you can take a look and see how Visual Studio Code works with your prompt, and we can start from there. But I'm going to just say something like, create a simple to-do list. And I'm not going to run this at the end. I just want to let it create in PowerShell to-do list script in PowerShell, a single PS1 file. Okay. Now that's a pretty minimal prompt. I'm going to hit enter, let it cook. Let's see what it comes up with. First, it talks to the model, and the model comes back and it starts a planning process. So it says, okay, I'll help you create this. First, I'll create it. It's going to tell me what it's going to do. So it basically has come up with a simple plan. And it's going to give me functionality to do an add, list, complete. So I complete tasks and remove tasks. So we're going to let that work. We're going to go back to Copilot. And now this went green. So that means it didn't have any errors and it completed. So if I go back to the pull requests, if you remember, initially, it put all these pull requests in with a WIP, which meant work in progress. Let's open up one of these. Let's open up the how to contribute, right? And Copilot does better work than I do. It tells me what the changes it made, right? I don't do that in my PRs. I usually go updated, and then I submit it, and I'm done. But it tells me what it was going to work on, how to add a new contribute section. It told me what changes it did, including the markdown. So a lot of extra work that most devs do. And this wasn't even a dev process. And comes in and tells me the implementation details it did. And awesome. Now we can take a look at things like the README. Now these are all separately done in three separate branches. Okay, so they didn't overlay each other. There's the contribute section. It looks pretty similar how you did the FAQ. And what's cool is down here you can see what Copilot communicates its status. So if it was doing a 15, 20, 30-minute process, you could watch this all update. You can click on view session here. And this shows you how the model was thinking, right? And you can scroll through what it was doing, what files it was looking at. And this is good to do because you can see how it was working, and then you can extrapolate how this would work in Grok, or how it would work in Gemini, or how it would work in Anthropic, so on and so forth. This is where we're heading. So that's cool. And this is all inside of repos. And then if I want, I can say ready for review, and then I can check it in. But what I'll do is I'm going to click on, let's see, the how to contribute section. I'm going to click on this, in fact, I'm going to go back to the how to contribute, because if I go into a PR and I press the dot, I can come up in the Visual Studio and it will pull down the PR and show me the diffs, which we're not going to really look at. So, but if you want, you can see the actual diffs of what happened on that run for that particular issue. If I come back here, and I think this was the README, right? Yep. So there's the README, and there's what it added to the contribute section. And it figured out from my simple scenario in my issue saying, hey, I need a contribute section in my README. It figured out where to put it, how to put it, followed the style guidelines. And so when I render it in Markdown, it looks like the rest of the document. And I can tell you that saying how to contribute is a really simple process for it to do. So I could actually sit in that one that one issue. I can make one issue or 10 issues that says, update A, put B in there, update C, create D, so on and so forth. And then I can kick off all of them so they can create branches, and or I can have it try to update everything in one file. Pretty strange to me that this all works in GitHub and AI. This whole AI stuff has only been around for a couple of years, where we've been going, and they're making GitHub fit to it. So it's really looking like these agents are little helpers, and then this whole check-in process is quite amazing and excellent. So let's go back and we'll take a look at one more. So any questions, any different direction? We're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes. So go back to this. We can then take a look at the FAQ page. Again, I'll press the dot. I'll pull down the PR, and we can see the changes that it made. Here's what it added for the FAQ. It added the 3 that I asked for. We can go check out the file directly. Right. And then here's the FAQs that it added, and it did it correctly. It named it FAQs. Maybe wouldn't like that, but fine. And it did a bunch of good stuff there. Made it a list. I can render that, and we can see the new changes. So off we go. Cool. Again, I can, since it's a dev environment, I can come back and I can then merge this into the main branch. So this could be a repo that I push out to as a website internal to my company or to one of the cloud vendors, and I can then merge everything back and then have the process that pushes everything that I want. And then this thing goes live. So you said this should be free. I mentioned that it might be free. Yeah. About enabling Copilot. Cool. So does that confirm that it's free, or is that just a bunch of, yeah, good. Thank you for posting that. Yeah. So definitely worth checking out. Now, the idea is what I just showed you is it's not magical to Microsoft. All the major vendors are doing in enabling certain parts of their flow to do this. This is what GitHub Copilot in M365 does. This is what Google's doing with their AI offering inside of their Google Cloud pieces like Excel and Word and whatnot. Cool. Thank you for that, for posting that. Awesome, on the GitHub docs and whatnot. So what I just showed you should be repeatable. or it's just a general template of thinking. Now, let's go back here. I asked it to do a programmatic task. I said, create a to-do list. So it looks like it finished, right? And it comes back and it tells me what it did, similar to how the GitHub PRs, the PR stuff does. Now, this is all part of a research paper that was done a few years ago by Hugging Face, and it was all about plan, reflect, and execute. Right. So first it plans and then it tells you what it did after it executes. Created a PowerShell script, told me what it did, and the script does this, that, the other. Um, and it's going to store it in .text file, which is great. And here's what's really cool. Inside of my IDE, inside of my integrated development environment, it's once it's done, it can even say, it's even asking, hey, you want me to run it for you? And I'm going to say cancel on that, but I'm going to keep the changes. We'll just take a quick look at the files. And I'm going to do a fold, right? And I can see all the different functions it created. It created an add, a get, a complete, and a remove. So that looks great. Now, as a developer, don't walk, but run and get any set of tools that you can. If you don't want to pay for them, find the ones that are free. They're pretty good. The more you pay for it, typically the better they are. Depending on the vendors that so there's a bunch of information you have to deal with to figure out which is good for you. But I just created this whole thing, and while it was just a to-do list, it did some fairly chewy things to get this done. And I'm only one step into a conversation. I can come back in here and say, oh, this is great. Separate all of the functions into a separate PS1 file, or put documentation on, or do things like create tests. And what I just described there can go inside of issues in the GitHub piece, and then that can become part of the issue. And then I can say, Copilot, go to work, and it will do things like create tests and do things and whatnot, check things in on a checkpoint basis. And I have used this in the last several weeks since it's announced I wake up and I dictate through my phone an issue into a repo I have, and I say, hey, try this out and this and build that and build the other thing. And I say, go for it, apply to Copilot, make my coffee. I come back and I've got a proof of concept that I can play with that I think is good, not good, take pieces out of, all that kind of stuff. So this is just helping me in a dev space. And I've turned it loose on old repos I have or old code I have to see the differences of, like, 15 years ago, it basically said your stuff is garbage. We're not going to even try, and so on and so forth. And other things it does really well. Mike asked the question, can an agent be set up to monitor, check, and work? and work. Okay, so we're going into Skynet. Can an agent be set up to monitor, check the work of other agents? Is there value in doing so? Depending on the system you're using, yes, you can. I have a agent flow in my PowerShell PSAI module. I looked at things like LangChain, Crew AI, Agno, which used to be called Phi data. And I looked at a bunch of those and I was like, yeah, that's all complicated. This comes down. And then people were saying, hey, this is just a loop, an object, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, that's what I see. And I built some agent capabilities, and I've done exactly what you've described. Is it the value in doing so? Absolutely valuable. This is where we're going. Being able to monitor and check the work of other agents, they call it the judge pattern. And it's not to worry about what the patterns are right now. Again, we're in chapter 6. By the time we get to chapter 10, we're going to have new names. There are things we were doing 3 months ago that were state of the art, and we knew, a lot of us know, it's state of the art in January, and it's passe by May. And that's just the way this industry is working. So, anyway, so another question from Paul JN. I don't know if I don't know how to pronounce that. And correction, you need a Copilot Pro or Copilot Enterprise license. You can enable that. Okay, so you might have to pay for it if outside. And I'm sure that Microsoft in the near term, they're going to start opening. They want more and more people to use it, because once you start seeing how this works, you're going to want to pay for bigger licenses. And if you can't get into the Copilot stuff with GitHub, make those mental notes. Look for agents that can do coding if you want to do the coding. You don't even have to, and you don't have to apply this approach to coding. It can be non-coding things that you need to do. Again, this is where we're headed. Don't walk, run to start figuring out how to use these things. And this is just a way of we're looking at how you do things with code is what I demoed today. But to the point of I think Mike said, building these things so they can monitor other things and then take action based on that is already happening. It's happening behind the curtain, and I've built them, and they're in my mind they're not difficult to build. So really, and it's fascinating. We could have done we were doing this stuff a year and a half ago. We weren't codifying it this way, but we were going through the pains of setting up all different kinds of prompting engines that could do things and then talk to the results, and then building code that would loop and then apply the next set of steps. And then thanks to all the major researchers that went deep on all of this stuff. And there's been many, many of them. And then luckily, companies like they've been picking it up and go, hey, we're going to make this into a product. And we have Cursor and Windsurf who've really pushed the boundaries on this. And now Microsoft has been and continues to put this into Visual Studio Code. And again, we're only in June, and it's going to be really interesting. So I'm going to wrap up. I really appreciate folks coming out. I hope this was helpful. Thursday, we're going to talk about how we can get um, AI to fix our prompts. Super important. And just as a preview, I sometimes sit here and have conversations just right here in the IDE or in Chat GPT on the web. I go into ask mode and I brainstorm. And then when I'm done brainstorming with it and having it look things up and this, that, the other thing, or looking at my code, I come in at the end and I talk about and I say, hey, help me construct a prompt that I'm going to put into the Copilot. And it helps me construct the prompt or it helps me construct the issue. And then I'll ask things like, how do I make this so it works in parallel and doesn't overlap? And then it might come up with 5 different issues. And then I take that and then drop it into GitHub Copilot, and we're off to the races. So this is really about planting seeds and getting the imagination, like what's possible here. This is beyond saying, I just want to do an add to do item with a named task, right? This is no longer function calls with parameters, right? We got to get out of that mindset. This is not a Google search. This is a conversation with a piece of software and a tool that you can have deep conversations with and then have it help you build things if you're into being a creator. Cool. Any questions? Anything? I hope it was good. Let me know. If not, we're going to wrap it up and hopefully see you this Thursday. If not, after Thursday, there's still 4 more. All right, folks. Thanks for joining. You're welcome.